If you could spend a moment with some remarkable people and discover what their life sounds like, what would you ask? Welcome to Are We On Air? An audio encounter. I'm Armand Nafei, and each episode will feature one conversation with an inspiring friend of mine who will share with us the soundtrack to their life. Welcome back to another episode of Are We On Air? I am your show's host, Armand Nafei, and this week we are being joined by one of the biggest DJs of our time. His name is RICHIE HAWTIN. Richie and I spent a lovely sake-infused Sunday at his newly opened sake bar in Berlin-Kreuzberg and talked about his life's soundtrack and how he started off and what influenced him and how he sees and feels techno. We also talked about his long-lasting collaboration with the designer Rah Band and of course his love for Japan and the sake culture. It was a fun and long conversation. Pour yourself a glass, turn up the volume and enjoy. So, cheers and welcome to Are We On Air? So, RICHIE HAWTIN, it's been a year since we were trying to set this up. We were both in Los Angeles. I actually saw you at the Hollywood Palladium when you were playing, which was incredible.
Yeah, that was the last close show of last year. It was like a tour I was doing for 2 years. And, now sitting here, in this whole crazy, weird year, it was an amazing show, but it was also kind of bittersweet because I knew that was the last show of that. And I actually had already, decisions were made months before, actually a year before that. After 2 years on the road with this big thing and a big touring gang, I wanted 2020 to be much simpler. I was only going to do, me and my assistant traveling, keep the gigs just fun. I was turning 50 this year. So it was like, I did this photo shoot in February. It was kind of a transitional shoot with Willy Vandenbeer, who's a friend of ours. And, something was already in the air, and then the whole world decided to take a transition with me. So I should not to make light of it, but it's like what life turns and weaves in very strange ways, and just as you think you have everything under control, the earth, the planet, the stars align and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, there's something much bigger going on than you.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think the one, beauty thing you can see or look at the whole scenario is like it kind of equalized everything and everybody.
Yeah.
Like we're all on the same level, no matter who you are, what money or whatever.
Yeah.
You're all on the same boat. And that's kind of a nice positive thing out of this.
Yeah, you know what? I think you've really seen more the similarities between people, and people have it's eased a lot of tension in some ways. Maybe other tensions came back, but I think it's eased the tension from my side and just allowed you to communicate deeper and just have that time and space to think. Life, I think, for all of us in the 21st century, whatever, it's just so intense. There's just no escape from life and work and media and internet. And
do you think technology plays a big role in that?
Technology is the thing that's just been growing potentially out of control. I think it's just so powerful that it used to be a new technology was developed and kind of slowly rolled out to the masses, and that gave whoever had created it, the company or the scientist, time to kind of keep tabs of the good and bad and kind of rebalance it as it kind of approached the rest of the world. And I think the advancement and the speed of innovation now is just allowing things to come straight to market so quickly that even the people creating it don't really understand the implications. And I always felt luckily that I'd been so into technology since a young age that I was pretty in tune with what was happening, and I was able to comprehend or accept new things very quickly. But even, I can even feel now with how fast things are going that you're like, wow, that's already here? Okay, now how do I bring that into my life? Or how do I use that for a new creative idea? Or what does that mean for the future? And I often think, especially now, if someone like me who has been so surrounded and intertwined with technology is thinking about things like that, what does that mean for the people who are more distant to technology or haven't grown up in that way? Not only for the older generation, but, and lots of kids are super into it, but there's still people who just don't feel alienated by technology. And if you feel alienated by technology at this moment in history, when technology is, especially right now, one of the things that ties us and allows us to communicate, then that can be a very difficult and dangerous place.
Yeah, agreed. Especially, I think it depends how old you are and what your social circumstances are. But then there's also a certain freedom to it. Because imagine if you would be detached from this today. What a power. I actually had this conversation this morning with a friend of mine, because Werner Herzog doesn't have a cell phone, for instance, right? And I thought, what a beautiful thing. He doesn't need to have a cell phone, It's like Bill Murray. Doesn't need to have an agent, or so you leave a voice message. We'll get the message. Don't worry, And that's actually, I think that's the future of luxury, really, to be able to be detached from all of this. That's like power.
There's a New York startup that has the light phone and doesn't do it that well. They're working on an update, so I hope it'll get better. Nokia did, and then there's another one which I've had version 1 and version 2 of the Punkt phone from Switzerland. That's pretty good, but it doesn't do a couple of the things efficiently. Or I haven't found my way to really disconnect completely. Yeah, technology is a driving force behind nearly everything I do. So, can I disconnect fully, or should I from here and there? It's, quite often a technical innovation kind of, always it's kind of the beginning of an idea for a new album, a new live show. So it's very, it's. I would say it's difficult to just maintain everything that is going on in every field.
You don't need
information overload. yeah. Smart filters, AI, please. I need an AI assistant. Come on, I'm ready for it.
Well, let's start with your memory.
I need an AI assistant for my memory.
External hard drive for that. Well, the idea, the purpose, and the concept of Are We On Air is basically to create paint a picture, but through a couple of songs of you and your work. And I start with your earliest memory, your significant musical memory that shaped you as an artist.
Wow, I think, I looked at this question when you sent this over, and I was like, okay, how far do I go back? I remember my dad having a black wall in his bedroom, my mom and dad's bedroom, which was the Dark Side of the Moon album cover that he had painted himself. And when I listened to that album later on, I was like, I know this album. So I don't know if that was an influence, Kraftwerk for sure, but we're going to get to that later. So one record that really kind of came to mind was this really funny disco record from the Rah Band, and it's called The Crunch. And it's from 1978, and right before I left the UK to go to Canada, which was November 11th, 1979, I had my 9th birthday, and I had a disco, which actually wasn't that out of it sounds super cool now, but in 79 everybody had discos probably for their birthday, and I got this record, and it's this crazy synthesizer record, and the first opening, say, 8 bars sound pretty much like an acid house record. It sounds kind of like the frequencies you would hear when I do some crazy drop in the middle of one of my sets, or the kind of analog fluctuations that you would hear in the background of a Plastic Man record. So I think there was lots of things leading up to that point, with my dad being into computers and technology and a complete music geek. But somehow that record really, really resonated with me.
And so you can hear that until today, then?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a analog squelchy kind of, if you can kind of twist yourself inside out, or at least your brain, there's that kind of frequency bandpass filter, which is like, and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, you get goosebumps. You're like, oh, I was just there, or I just arrived, and it's like, okay, how do I get there? And then once you're there, you're like, oh, how do I get out of here? So it's kind of like that sound.
Can you remember a track that you made where that element is in there? Like, can you compare them next to each other?
Yeah, actually, there's the first track or second track on Plastic Man Sheet 1, Plasticine or Plasticity. There's this weird, exactly squelch analog thing that's just coming out every 4 beats, or 1 bar, 2 bars. And it's just pulsating through the whole thing. And as we speak about it, because I listened to this Rah Band again this morning, you get that kind of same frequency, warmness. You know, it's there for sure.
Well, how would you describe yourself or the sound of you with 3 records? It don't have to be Richie Hawtin records.
I have an idea for both, but yeah, let's go from reverse before we get to my track. You know, I was for sure influenced by the European sound, and again, my dad, it was Tangerine Dream always playing in the background, but it was really when I found acid house and Chicago acid house and Detroit Techno, which really grabbed me. You know, it really got me to become a DJ and really pushed me over the edge of wanting to make my own music. And that was the late 80s. Before that, I never thought I would make music. I was going into videography. I wanted to be a cinematographer or be actually a special effects wizard. Like, I was into all these horror movies and sci-fi movies. I had these like crazy magazines, Fangoria and all this. But anyway, when I found clubbing and electronic music, it was a combination of Chicago acid house and Detroit techno, which I think helped define my sound. Chicago future acid tracks is not only probably the most quintessential and earliest use of a 303, and it is just raw and simple and hypnotic. Roland drums, Roland 303, and 12 minutes, I don't know, 14 minutes, and it just pummels and stomps and meanders along. And if it grabs you, you're done for. And if it doesn't, you know, it's a track that doesn't try to grab you somehow. It doesn't have it has a hook, but it doesn't. So like some people, I always find they either get my music.
It's like a journey, it's a train.
Yeah, but I think like when you're into, I don't know if the word minimal or whatever, it's like this kind of things which are kind of reduced just to their bare essentials. Not everybody resonates with that type of thing. So it's either you're just scratching your head and you don't hear it, or you get it fully and you're gone for those 12 minutes. And that's what acid tracks did to me back in the day. And it's something which is at the core of how I play and the music I make.
Must have been so exciting to be there when you were there, when it was actually getting created. You know, you were like at the start of all of this.
Yeah, I was still 16, 17 as those records were coming out. They're like 87, 88. So I wasn't in Chicago, but I was there at the very close time, and I became friends with Derek May, whose record we'll speak about next. And so you did feel, that was the exciting thing. It really felt like it was happening at that moment. That feeling is still so strong that it can't be something that I've created after all these interviews for over the years, because sometimes you talk about so much that you forget what was real or not. But like, I really remember feeling that anticipation and excitement as a late teenager, and feeling like there was a musical revolution that I was seeing in a trip to England one summer, and then coming back and seeing and meeting Derek May and hearing Acid House, and it was bubbling up on the underground radio stations in Detroit that were beaming into Windsor. And then suddenly, somehow I was in the middle of it. Somehow I was meeting the people who were making some of those records. Somehow the records that were resonating with me, once I kind of tracked down who was making them and who was actually pressing them, were coming from Detroit artists, some of them being pressed at the record store, like in the back of the record store that I was already going to buy, actually, in the beginning, European imports. You know, so it was just an epicenter, and that was really why I dove completely into it. You know, I skipped going to Toronto to university and college. I stayed at Windsor, stayed at my parents' house, did a lesser study in communications just so that I could be close to Detroit and see where it went. And it was an active, I sat with my parents and said, okay, I want to stay here, and this is why, you know. And if it doesn't go anywhere, then I'll go back. And I remember my parents were very supportive, and my best friend's parents were like, you're crazy. So luckily it wasn't the reverse, so maybe I wouldn't be here. So yeah, future acid tracks. Incredible. What a journey. And then Derek May, Rhythm is Rhythm. Of course, everything he made at that point was a soundtrack to driving around Detroit. But there's a particular track called It Is What It Is. And somehow that's if you meet Derek, it's a bit, somehow that title reminds me of Derek. It is what it is, you know. You know, the emotions in that record and what I was feeling by meeting him and Kevin Saunderson and Juan Atkins, it was maybe more metallic, more futuristic. I think my music somehow has the hypnotism of acid tracks and the futurism that I felt and that I still believe is at the heart of Detroit Techno.
Pressure, you know, like pressure cooker. You know, and this is my hope for what's going to happen after this year, after 2020. You know, after the ashes, something beautiful is coming. Musically speaking, it's going to come out of this, just like what happened back then. You know, it was like this small thing out of the ashes, and out of bleakness, something beautiful came out.
Yeah, I think, you know, why there was so much innovation and is so much innovation in places like Detroit and Chicago, were that they were kind of off the beaten track, especially Detroit. And music was or is a way of life. And, you know, now, you know, I would say, you know, with the popularity of electronic music, although people think it's a way of life, it's kind of a trend and people's pathway to become famous or make money. But then, it was so beautiful to see that it was just at the core. You know, I remember going, you know, over the studios of Kevin and Derek and that gang, and there was always something bubbling in the speakers. There was never silence, you know? It was really the fabric of life. And I think, okay, there's a lot of, you know, you're hearing a lot of, you know, sad stories now of clubs closing and hardship with artists and DJs and you know, how are we going to come out of this in a positive way, you know? But I agree with you that, you know, through hardship, through all of us in different levels getting pushed in a way that we didn't expect, in some to extremes, is really pushing us to decide what we're here for and what we want to be involved with and who we want to be involved with. And I think those type of values bring back this spirit and bring back this human connection and this real urge and belief. And like this, it's like nearly like a biochemical thing that you have to do music. You know, and I think that's create, yeah, and you know, that urge doesn't come, you know, that comes from a very deep place, and I'm expecting that the people who feel that urge through this time will only dig deeper to kind of, find a new source of creativity and innovation and excitement that will drive the next phase of electronic music and this whole culture forward.
Cheers again. We're actually here in Sake 36.
Sake 36.
Your latest venture. Very exciting, very beautiful. Sake bar.
Sake bar, sake shop, sake store in Berlin-Kreuzberg. My other passion that, passion and continuing on from what we're just talking about in creativity, it just comes from within. And you can either try to ignore it or you can welcome it and explore it. And that's what took me to music. It's what took me to DJing and what ended up taking me to Japan. And through those travels, introduced me to the world of, sake, of, a great feeling alcoholic beverage that was, I loved the vibe from the very beginning, but also introduced me to a whole world of other creatives. And so it goes deeper for me than the feeling that was of that initial impression, and again brings you in connection with people you want to hang out with or who inspire, and kind of push you.
You really kind of cleaned your house through all this, right? I mean, how many people in your address book you're like, actually, do I really want to spend my precious time that I have with someone you don't really know or really want to spend with, or doesn't give you that positivity or creativity or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's about it's some kind of feedback loop, like it's either, it could be a relationship where, when you call, they call you back, and that goes, or it could even be an artist or something that inspires you, that you watch them, and then something you get something, they get something out of that. But it's a feedback loop. It's a sharing somehow, and definitely there's, we all have the things in our lives that sidetrack us, or people that perhaps we don't feel like there's a balance in the relationship. And I think this time that we're going through is just a moment to reevaluate all those things. And I think talking about technology in the beginning of how advanced and how it's bringing us all together, but we're human. If we're not in touch with our emotions and really going how we're feeling, that's always for me been the guiding light. And I'm not always in touch with my emotions. Sometimes you get so wrapped into a project that you lose sight, and when you should come back. But when you are, and when I had those moments, and I think one of my reasons of being successful in the projects that I'm around, or in people that I'm with, is the sensitivity to that. And the sensitivity is also a key kind of emotion or sense, or combined senses for DJing too. If you can't understand what's happening on a dance floor, and you're in this flow and what you want to do and what's all coming together, you can't do that.
It's a conversation you're having. It's ping pong. You can't just have, this is my word and now listen. It doesn't work. I mean, you come prepared, but you can't stick to the script.
No. I like that that type of situation. Yeah. Like living on whatever edge that is, but going with the flow. And I think that's just feeling alive.
It's also way more exciting and interesting because some off things happen. One collaborator of yours, I guess a friend of yours, is the designer Raf Simons. You guys been working a lot together over the past few years. One of your latest venture was in September.
Yeah, September. Right? The summer 21 women's show.
How was that? I mean, it's the new first collaboration between Mucha Prada and Raf, and probably also for you, different than usually working with.
Yeah, well, no, that it was their first collaboration, and then that Raf was coming over and inviting me into the mix was, incredible project for sure, and but also well timed, because I think no matter what, if I would have done it even without COVID happening and even being fully on the DJ schedule, which would have made it very difficult to find the time and focus. Maybe Raf also understood how time had changed, and that's also part of the reason he invited me. So who knows, but I was ready for it when it came. And yeah, Raf, it's a continuation of those people that you meet in your life that you somehow just feel connected to. You know that you understand or see the world in similar ways. And Rah was listening to my music since the early 90s. I met him.
I mean, he's a techno head.
He was, honestly, I was in my 20s playing, and so I was like, yeah, Rah Simmons, super famous designer behind you. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm playing, like do my thing. And like 6 hours later, he was still there, sitting there, listening and just observing. And I always remembered that. And then over the years, through other friends that you met, that you feel connected with, all the kind of dots, and in the end, start leading back to similar people, right? And that's what happened with Rah. We had a really amazing project together when he was at Dior, when we did the Guggenheim, and so when Rah called about Prada, although it definitely felt no disrespect for any other fashion houses, but when he called on behalf of Prada, it was like, okay, this is a serious project, but I know that Rah understands my music, has that shared outlook, so that he's making that call with the right intention. And so that, in a way, made it easy to say yes, and also easy to have many conversations, very open and transparent with Rah as we were, as I was developing, as he was developing and finalizing with Muicha the collection and the actual design, and they were sharing images, and we were, I wouldn't do this with anybody, but we were, I was very open to suggestions or critiques, and we were doing slight changes until 2 a.m. the morning of the show, because they were also tweaking the last film edit, and it had to be a cohesive, beautiful piece. And so it was incredible, like 3 weeks intense work. Everybody else was like, where's Rich? Is Rich a ghost? What happened to him? But it was incredible. And one of the things I love about electronic music is its ability to allow one person to orchestrate the whole frequency range of a song, and from beginning to end, and have that power to push his or her own artistic sonic experience. So being in the studio alone is one of my most cherished moments. I love it. Here and there I collaborate, but having a collaboration with someone from a completely different world, but who has that shared kind of, you feel like a couple of neurons in my brain and his brain are completely like, there's a string attached, right? And they're connected. But the intention is coming from a different sense. That's a kind of collaboration where you learn so much about yourself, about other people, and that you push, and you have some struggles, and again, it feels like you're alive, and then you come out of it renewed, refreshed, exhausted, and ready to do it all again.
So when you approach a project like this, for instance, a collab with Rah, does he sends the mood board and mood board images, and this is the vision of this season. Does he create like an audio mood board? He sends a playlist, like these are reference tracks?
He sent, that was actually very important to get the project moving, because he really, Rah called me 3 weeks before the show, and he gave me a mood board of songs from my catalog, which he and Muicha had listened to together.
But this was Plastic Man,
this
right?
Is Plastic Man, yeah. Plastic Man songs, kind of saying, okay, here's my favorites, here's her favorites, and then here's the looks, and these are the concepts.
Favorites of your work.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So he probably showed off.
Rah had introduced him. I don't believe. We had met actually just briefly when I did a Prada show, the after party, just last year. So again, like these dots, sometimes something just pops up and you're like, where did that come from? And then either before you finish it or afterwards, in retrospect, you understand that somebody else was creating some dots before, and it makes sense, But yeah, that kind of the ideas of their shared, the tracks that they found, both of them found a connection to. But other than that, then we talked a couple of things, and I went into the studio 2 days later and basically wrote the track. And what you hear, of course, there was 2 weeks of developments and timing and effects, but the feeling and
core.
actually the progressions and the core was done. It was, in that part, it was really easy. So, yeah.
Well, it was a beautiful show, and
Yeah, no, it was absolutely, it was mind-blowing. Like, I think, what they did together, of course, on the design, the way and the intention on every level of asking unknown models come on. I think it was most of the models or all of the models first time they had done a show. Like, it was all there.
Fresh. This is a kind of a new beginning, right? Also in that period. It's funny. I had the chance to play for both Muja and Rah over the years as well. And a fun anecdote with Rah, when he was still at Calvin, it was a Christmas party, and they brought me in because it's a Christmas party for Calvin Klein in New York. It's the accountant is there, the secretaries, everything, and everybody. So they had their first DJ who was just playing like top 40 hits, Christmas, like get them all drunk, and then they brought me in for Rah, right? So I can play some German techno. And I was like, and I walked in and I was like, are you sure? Because it's like, your mom is basically dancing on a dance floor and they want Rihanna. Yeah. I was like, this is so awkward. I had the transition. How are we going to do this? I was so nervous and uncomfortable about it, and on a little podium. And then, no, it's fine. Rah wants it. Rah wants it. Okay. So I take over and I asked the DJ to play at least like a housey track at the end so we can, something, some transition. And I started with, some housey stuff, and then Rah was like, no, go harder. I'm like, are you sure? And I just went like super hard, and he loved it. And everybody in the room was looking like, what's going on? What's happening? But because Rah was loving it, they started to adapt, and then we played a 2-hour set like that. That for me, I loved that moment because this is going back to connecting the dots of people, like-minded people and places. I mean, that's what I love about your DNA, because it literally goes through everywhere. Like we're here in your beautiful restaurant, the sake, the tones, the colors, it references everything. Like your music and your visual is like hand in hand. And then of course the people like Rah who speak that language as well, No,
this is, I remember having a similar apprehension when I was doing a 3-hour set recorded for the kind of after party dinner for Dior. And it was like, okay, well, Rich, just make it, make it for me, don't worry about everyone else. It's like, yeah, I know, but there's going to be 200 people there, and I'm going to be sitting there having dinner, watching what's going on. But it is, it's like connecting dots, and people gravitate to people who they feel connected to or believe, and not everybody has it, but everybody's open-minded, especially when someone that they believe in is presenting something that they believe in, So
they're at least curious about it, at least open-minded, at least some people. Yeah,
and that's, in that way, Rah is curating the music around him, everything around him. It's like what we all do. And if that, I always believe if it's true and it's coming from the same place as what, where everything is coming from, it will make sense. Maybe not everybody will appreciate it, but they've got to at least say, okay, I get it. Like people walk in here and they may not find any sake they like, but 90% they will. They'll be like, okay, well, this makes sense in the Hawtin world or the Hawtin universe. And that's the universe I live in. And and that's all I can do.
Yeah, it's plenty. It's beautiful. Well, talking about sake, and you have your own brand as well, Enter Sake, right?
Yes, we were going to. We'll try that afterwards. Yeah.
Well, you have one glass of Enter Sake. What song do you play? And you have 5 glasses of the sake. What do you play then, or listening to?
I'm actually. I'll tell the story about this and why I picked these, because we're talking about the past. We talked about, Detroit and Chicago, but one of the things that excites me about electronic music is it's always this incredible push forward. There's something always exciting. So I was sitting right here, at the end of this, 6-meter bar, just us right now. And I was sitting here with my wife a couple of days ago, right before the Plastic Man film premiere. drinking sake. And the first drink was the first song, and by the time we ended, we were like pumping it, which is exactly. So this is exactly true to life, tried and tested 2 days ago, and it's 2 brand new songs.
And are we an air premiere?
So it's absolutely incredible new Avalon Emerson record, Rotting Hills, just came out this week. Beautiful. Well, it reminds me of when I first heard it. It reminded me of being on a beach at an after hours for Cocoon on Ibiza, because it's got this melody which kind of is so beautiful and so euphoric that you've been raving for like 12 or back then 24 hours. But it's euphoric, it's beautiful, but it's also somehow, when little melodies and delays, it starts to get kind of trippy and psychedelic. So that's the moment which would be perfect for me in that feeling when you're having a first sake. Sake is hypnotic. It has a very, very special feeling. And one of the other reasons why I'm so into it was because when I was in Japan, I was, of course, drinking heavily as I was playing. And it really, I go too far on this. People are like, Rich, just shut up. But I think it has the same kind of frequency range. So somehow it resonates with each other.
So the sake literally influenced your sound.
Yeah, I think anything you're doing or your mood influences the sound, right? So yeah, I think if hypnotism or loopy, psychedelic, this kind of headiness is in my music, which I think it is, sake is the perfect accompaniment, and this Avalon Emerson is absolutely beautiful. So, but after 4 or 5 sake, and they have these beautiful bottles, you can see down here, these big ones. These are 1.8 liter traditional bottles called these shobins. So, if we're talking about 5 of those, you're in trouble.
Well, I think anything 5 bottles will be in trouble.
But when we were sitting here listening after a bottle and a half the other night, which is five glasses, we were listening to this new song from an Argentinian producer who's living in Barcelona. I don't remember his real name. Firter. Pfirter. I've been playing his tracks forever. And this new track called Rise is 138, 140 beats per minute. You're going to hear it in a second. And it's either going to be, when your listeners are listening, getting excited right now, and 30 seconds from now, they're either going to be deeply in it, or they're going to be pressing skip, because it's very stripped down. It's what I love, especially about techno right now. It's fast and furious. Although I do play hard and maybe even abrasive sometimes, I've always looked at the music I do as intense, not hard, so... And intense can be 100 beats per minute. It doesn't actually. But this track is intense, and it's just like you can just close your eyes and lose yourself within. And even if you had no music on and you were into sake 4, 5, 6, or 15, you may find yourself in that same headspace.
Well, from all your gigs that you played over the years, I know it's very hard because there are like millions. Do you remember a fun moment a memory that you cherish?
Well, there's 1995 being at Glastonbury, playing a Plastic Man live show, which was just all hardware. And right in the middle of my show, the power going out and feeling, okay, fuck, I'm fucked. If I don't come back from this, it was like as Plastic Man was just skyrocketing, from the UK with an explosion of electronic music. And I really remember taking a deep breath and then when the power came up, resetting everything and pressing start. And of course, it was an explosion. It was absolutely like, I couldn't have planned. And it just like...
How long was the outage?
Wow. Usually when those things happen, it's a couple of minutes. So long enough that people are like, okay, we're waiting for you, prove yourself. Yeah. So there's that comes to mind. There was a beautiful moment when I was with all my friends. Also, it was actually the first Plastic Man live show in Detroit, August 1994. And we're, 1,200 kids in the Packard building, disused automotive factory in Detroit, decaying, probably unsafe, completely illegal, and the police coming. Actually, behind me, there was a garage door, and suddenly this garage door opened, and the light streamed in, and this is what I remember, 2 silhouettes, and music's pumping, sweaty, 8 hours into the party, and police, and they just looked, kind of shook their head, and closed the door. It could have been hallucination.
It was the psychic speaking.
So, yeah, and the other thing that came to mind is it's Argentina, because I've had so many beautiful gigs down there, and the energy is unparalleled. Somehow I made a connection to the people of Buenos Aires, and they've been so supportive. And we were down there doing some enter showcases, and it was just madness. Like it just, it was just so in sync. And these are the moments where, as an artist, as a performer, and as a DJ, you're always like, okay, what am I going to play? How am I going to get the people to go into the place that I want to take them? How much are they pulling me? How much am I pulling them? And then at certain moments, that all disappears, and you're there. You're in this moment completely together. And luckily, that happens more often than not, but sometimes it happens on such a strong way, and that it just sustains for so long, that it's absolutely incredible. The whole world disappears, and you're there together. And so those are the moments that come together, The Block, in Tel Aviv, beautiful, incredible sound system. A lot of old turbo light, I believe, if I remember, and so very warm, very particular. And, every time you play, you have to adjust how you play and the songs that you play. Sometimes the record that sounds amazing on a Friday night sounds different on the next night, sometimes because of the way you play it, sometimes because of the sound system, sometimes because of the way that people react. So these are all adjustments that you're doing in real time.
That's why you can't stick to the script.
And this is why, this is, as I say about these Plastic Man shows, which are, are amazing, but sometimes after a couple of months or years of doing a Plastic Man live show, I build those shows to be as spontaneous as possible, but they're still based, especially when you're doing an audio-visual show, you still have certain requirements that you need to fix before you go on stage. And a live show usually is a certain repertoire of looks and sounds, and it's an incredible experience. But what always brings me back to the pureness of DJing, and this is, I wish all live musicians understood this, is that the flexibility of DJing, the ability, and there's no band, it's like one person, you're just, it's immediate. The record that you just heard, or the song you just made, it can be immediately, put into use and into effect to this unassuming audience in front of you. And even to, I'll play, before I've even finished listening to a whole track, You know, I get something, you know, in the hotel 2 hours before. I've even had kids give me a USB stick, and I'm there. I go into the back because I know this, you know, this kid makes some good music, and that track becomes the hit of the night. Like, there's so incredible beauty of that, you know. And sometimes those tracks don't even come out. Well, there's a kid, Nicholas from Colombia, N Sound. He did a couple of records on my label Minus, and he always, whenever he showed up with something, was really amazing. But very, very particular.
I'm sure he's gonna love this. Little shout out.
Yeah.
Incredible. Well, after COVID, where do you think nightlife and club culture or culture at large is going to head? It's hard to predict, but
I do think we're resetting and remembering the values of our culture, and the community, and the feeling, this immersive feeling that we get when coming together on the dance floor. So I think a lot of things are going to push us into enjoying this music potentially in smaller places again. You know, I don't think we can just go back to only clubs, because the culture is so huge now that we need festivals, and they will continue to be important gateways, but they can't be the only place where we enjoy electronic music. We can't let the popularity of electronic music force all of us to only play on the festival circuit in the summer and only play at front-loaded sound systems for 5, 10, or 15,000 people. Sure, it works. And actually, certain music works in that context. And also, I would say that even part of the trend of techno right now, of hard, fast techno, also works in that context. So we have to be very careful that we come out of this with a balance to allow the music to continue to flourish and to remember, you know, this welcoming, this invitation to the dance floor, this equality, all these things that what brought us to the dance floor in the first place, you know, this kind of eclectic, crazy group of kids who were actually the nomads and the kids who didn't fit in anywhere else. That's what I saw on the dance floor when I first found myself there. And that became the shared aesthetic, was that we were outcasts, or just a little bit nerdy, or a little bit, you know, different looking, or a little bit feminine or masculine, like all these weird things that we suddenly felt like we were accepted for that. And all that, I think we should be, well, we, you know, of course, be not only accepting, celebrating. That's who we are. You know, we're a very special, safe place, and I think it's going to be very important to be very much in control of our culture. You know, also as it exploded, a lot of, you know, I'm open to inviting and letting and welcoming anybody into our culture and our music, but at some point you've got to look at each other and say, okay, are you here for the same reasons that I'm here? Okay, that's good. And if not, say, well, maybe, you know, go and find your own thing. And I think we have to do that on a greater level.
Yeah, I think this is like a natural cleanse that's happening right now. And it's definitely going back to, as you said, to its roots and more local. You know, like the touring, the way it was, is not going to happen anytime soon. And also the cheap flights. I had this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. How can it be that you can fly 45 minutes from Berlin to Copenhagen for like 35 euros, whereas a taxi ride from Kreuzberg to Mitte is going to cost you already 20 or something, you know? So I think that is what's going to happen eventually. The price is going to go up. So the touring becomes different. And also social media plays a big role, and certain artists that charge crazy fees, they just started off. Usually you would get, let's say, 3K, but you're asking for 12. You know, how's that? Like, and you've been around for a year. I've got my social media followers. I think that, you know, that's going to be a natural cleanse there. I think it's going to have people like, it was a wake-up call.
Yeah, well, I think like we're all living the world and our culture too. Maybe not everybody, but to a certain point, there was expectations, more gigs, more money, more festivals. Now, you know, more mega brands. You know, and I was already having, you know, questions about playing for, brands that were based somewhere, but suddenly were popping up in other countries or cities around the world. And you're like, well, what happened to the local brand? What happened to the local promoter? Oh, they're partners. Oh, where's the local DJs? Like, all these things need to be really looked at hard, and difficult decisions and opinion needs to be expressed and spoken about. And like you said, touring, and look, I see so many people talking about, and also DJs, about being good and bringing us all together and be good to the planet and being vegan and all this, all great messages. And at the same time, they're posting those from their private jet. Like, so we can't do everything if we want to go forward in a more positive, respectful culture. And hopefully, like, our culture could be a leading force in how to entertain and give people joy in a non or less destructive situation. So I remember, in a way, it's like you look back at like touring rock bands. They would get on a bus and go one place to another place to another place, and then DJ World came in and we're going all over the place. It's why everyone wants to be a DJ. Oh, one person, you make so much money, private jets, all this. Everything we've been promoting is also wrong. Like, we're part of the problem, so we have to be part of the solution. Yeah.
It's funny, like Seth Troxler always said, we are basically just glorified club promoters who get shipped around, I'm like, it's so true. I'm sure you don't miss that, right?
I don't expect to go back to full tilt. I don't want to. Whatever comes, I want to use this as to come out of this better, rebalanced. I was always meandering between Plastic Man and Hawtin and studio work and technology and other interests. And if I want to actually play at my best, I need to feel my best. I need to feel my emotions. I need to let them come out. I can't be exhausted. I can't be being pushed or try to be doing 5 gigs in a weekend or instead of just doing 2. A couple of years ago, I stopped doing double gigs. Maybe once a year instead of like 20 times, because it was like the only person who won on that was you. Double gigs in one night.
In one night, yeah.
Usually it meant a private jet. Yeah. So first you were killing the planet. Second, you were doing 2 gigs, so you're somehow...
You can't really engage properly.
No, because you're balancing your energy. You're thinking of like, how do I do the first one good to do the second one good, which usually means, well, maybe I'll do the first one not so good so that I can still have energy. So there's all these kind of like factors that many, like all of us need to like kind of rethink, but it comes out, this is the moment where I think if enough of us rethink this, then let's say the old timers can make a good example, and hopefully some of the newcomers are coming up are already thinking differently, which sometimes I think that, but then sometimes I think of who their role models were, and then I look at what we've been doing, but when maybe we weren't as good of a role model as we thought. We knew what was in our heart and where we were driven by music for the last 25 years or 30 years. But when someone's come up only in the last 5 years and seen Ibiza and private jets and tweeting only about the top 100, then that's what you do, right? So this is also why we need to think about this. But at the end, what I love doing is being creative. In all these projects, and that's my sweet spot. That's when I'm more in my Hawtin universe, and when I can invite people into that, whether they're at a gig or whether they come down to the sake shop or they listen to the new album or see what I've done with Prada. This is like, that's where I'm going to say it again, where you feel alive and that you're doing something super cool and exciting, and there's people around you, and it's just intoxicating, those moments.
It's freedom. Creative freedom is the key, and you can flourish. And I think one of the things that happened this year for us creatives is to give that time and space to be able to sink in and start pondering.
This is also why other than, well, basically I've done no live streams.
You were kind of silent.
No, the first stream I did was the Plastic Band show, which was was pre-recorded. It was a film. I really wanted to. I was already coming into this year, like I said, as a kind of a transition. So when this happened, in the beginning, I was setting up some cameras and okay, how am I going to do some kind of stream? And I was like, you know what? If there's ever been a moment to take a step away from that, and really kind of close your turntables on at my computer and put my mixer away. This is the moment. And so that was a very hard decision in the beginning, even for the first couple of months, as everybody was doing streams and doing this and making huge noise and, Instagramming, but I just wanted to kind of disappear and think about things and look at what was out there and think, what am I involved in? Where are we at, and where do I want to go forward? Like, that was the only way to go forward out of this, in my opinion, in an incredible, creative, like full steam ahead, is to come back into it with your full heart and passion. And I really wanted to see and understand where that was. And so I disappeared into my studio, which was, in my mind, where I started. Even though I started DJing first, it was the records that were my calling card. The first Plastic Mans, the first Fuse, Cybersonic with Dan Bell, +8 records. Even when I started Minus, it was Consumed, it was Minus Orange. These things kept coming out, and they were like, you need Rich to come and DJ. So music was always my founding point. And I really, when all this happened, I was like, I'm always in a rush to make music just to kind of stoke the fire. Let me let the fire go out right now and just see what I would make to put back on there when I'm ready to light it again. And I'm not even ready to light it again. Like, I'm more active now. I can say I started listening to music actually for this Spotify playlisting. I went back through my promos for the first time in 6 months, and it was really exciting. But I'm not ready to go out and play again yet. I know I will. I can feel that I want to, but I can also tell you that I don't. But I'm not ready yet.
I like how you said that. Let the records speak, right? Let me go back to the basic. What is my calling card? It actually kind of reminded me of, I don't know if you saw The Last Dance, the documentary about the Chicago Bulls, the 90s Bulls, and Michael Jordan. Oh, you should watch it. Well, it came out amazing, incredible, very inspiring. See, MJ.
Well, it's Sunday. It's movie night tonight. So
there you go. Yeah, it was. I think it broke records when it came out in April or something, because everybody's stuck at home and ESPN launched it. Anyway, one of the things he said is, because when he was like at his height in the early mid 90s, also commercially speaking, all these brands and collaborations, McDonald's, Nike, whatever, it's like, none of this would have happened if it wouldn't be come down to my game. This is my calling card. This is what it's what I'm focused on. Like, I wouldn't be the guy if I would shoot 2 points an average game or something, And so this is his focus, like tunnel vision.
When I'm good at that, and I'm on point of my game, I'm at my strongest emotionally, it's where everything can start again. And I think, speaking about everybody else out there and the, kind of the up and coming next generation, when you have all these other things to balance now, which it's crazy how fast a career boots up and how fast managers come in, how fast you need social media. And it's great that people's numbers rise super fast, but yeah, if the foundation doesn't stay there and you don't keep working on that, because the foundation can also crumble, then this can finish overnight, And that also takes me back to, the mindset that I had with John Acquaviva in the beginning of our career was like watching Factory Records and Mute Records and early Warp, and really thinking of like, hey, if there was no given that this scene was going to be around in 2 years, 5 years, or 30 years. So really, you really wanted to make your mark. You really wanted to like be strong, and you always somehow, because you weren't so sure where it was going in the future, you always wanted to imagine what decisions you could make now to make it still happen. That you could prolong it, So that's still my mindset,
Refill?
Yeah, because we have to try Enter Sake.
We're going to try Enter Sake. Ooh, that's a nice big bottle.
If you've ever been to Japan, you go to Osaka, go a little bit southwest, and there's a brewery called Peace. It's kind of my sake brother. Yamamoto-san. He's in his early 40s, and he's like a long distance marathon runner, and he works like that. He's up every morning, going around Japan.
We're going back to the same characteristics. It's a long stretches.
And he's traveled all over Japan with his sake, getting as many young people to drink it, showing them the heritage, the taste, the feeling, and just like being a constant promoter of his love, his passion, also his business, because this is also my business. And that's his English is as bad as my Japanese, but we're brothers in arms. Cheers.
Cheers to him.
Kanpai.
Well, talking about documentaries and other influences and references, have you recently discovered something in music, art, or film that caught your attention or inspired you?
I was in the studio the whole time, so I wasn't actually watching too much, but I think in April, during the beginning of lockdown, we were kind of clearing out, organizing things, going through archives. And that's when I rediscovered the David Terranova film of Plastic Man, which we just debuted on Friday. And my wife and I, we were like, let's watch this and see. And it was just so weird and isolated. And it just made so much sense to us in that current situation. And that was the beginning point of trying to resurrect this film and bring it, and deliver it to the people at this moment. So that's kind of that's something that was really inspiring about like how the past kind of somehow resonated with the present. And other than that, the most interesting thing for my birthday, my brother gave me a book by Anne Truitt. She's an artist from the U.S. from the 40s or 50s. If people out there, if you know John McCracken, he makes these beautiful minimalistic sculptures, and then Sol LeWitt or Donald Judd in that kind of beautifully sensitive. And I discovered her late last year, saw some pieces at Art Basel, and every time you go to Art Basel, for me, it's like somebody has been rediscovered. And last year was Anna Truitt. And so my brother gave me this book, and it's called A Daybook Journal of an Artist. And I've been reading that book since June. And only in the morning or at night, I read like 2 or 3, 4 pages. So in the beginning, I read a lot more, but then this book is so interesting that there's so many pages marked with like little quotes and ideas. I posted some here and there, but it's just to live in this artist's head she's so dedicated to this kind of subtractive work that nobody around her was really understanding, especially at that moment, and also as a woman, and also as a mother trying to balance life. And I think, although I'm not balancing life as a woman or like her, I think it somehow resonated with me in this moment as we're all balancing life and making decisions and having conversations that we did not expect to be having. And so this is a really, really inspiring book. And so if you're into, I think it's a book that could resonate with anybody, because it's not actually about her art. It's about a bit of the process, but it's really it's really beautiful.
I'll definitely check it out. It's kind of the philosophy of her work, basically.
Yeah, but philosophy of her work, and just how also the sacrifices that she had to make her work resonate, and I think that comes also to the idea right now of going forward. What if we were all on this hamster wheel before, and if our music culture was like exploding on some level, which I think it was, but I think our culture has been decaying in a way that the inequality of fees between DJs and musicians has been is disparate, and if there's not this beautiful ecosystem of DJs supporting artists by playing their music and finding a way that those musicians are properly compensated, and that new music is coming and DJs are excited and the crowd is like excited, and like it's such an incredible ecosystem that we have. And I think some parts have been broken, partly by digital distribution and streaming, and people not actually valuing music as much, and people maybe, I'll say it, maybe overvaluing DJs.
I think it became plastic.
Some of this is all that was in my head. Actually, I came into this year, and at my 50th birthday, I wanted to release a statement of my values going forward, which kind of got derailed because so many things changed, and actually so many more things came up to talk about. I just think there's, I think everything is so volatile. Our scene, the planet, everything. And if we don't, take some of these things in our hand and actively try to work with and heal and fix, we're not gonna. This is not gonna be the last of these pandemics. Like the last one was 1912, 1918. It's a recurring thing, probably every 100 years. But the way we're going, the way we're kind of pushing the planet, it could be every 50 or every 25. Do we really want this to become a norm? We're already getting heat waves and this. So yeah, like if people aren't noticing this, then we're really blind and deaf, and it would be really, even though we won't be around, it would be really sad to be judged as the generation that, made the tipping point. But that goes really good actually into another note I made about art. And the other movie that I watched was this Jim Jarmusch movie, Only Lovers Left Alive, which I'd never seen. My wife's like, you have to see this. And that was also so beautiful. These vampires, and like they've been living centuries, and these lovers.
The beautiful Yasmin Hamdan.
Wow, that's where I'm going.
She was meant to be on the series, but then the bombing explosion happened, and she couldn't. She was devastated. So hopefully, in a few months, I could be able to speak to her.
Yeah, tell her I'm a big fan. Like honestly, I'd heard her name, but then in this final scene in this movie, and what's the track she sings, High. Well, it is so. Well, I got goosebumps again, second time today, thinking about this track. Like, it's such a beautiful, sultry, and how she is just so captivating by herself. Like, there's just the power of, like, and this comes down to every music, all art. Like, when you can take this passion, this energy, and then just transfer it directly into people. Like, we use some loudspeakers to make it happen. This is so magical. And this performance in this movie is mind-blowing, incredible.
If you haven't seen it, you have to watch it.
Yeah, watch it. Yeah, well, yeah, okay, so now is your moment to fast forward. So don't listen to the next song until you've watched the movie, because then it's such a beautiful surprise at the end. Fuck it, do it. Listen to it and watch it.
Well, to go slightly more intimate, what's your go-to falling in love or heartbreak song?
The first thing that came to mind for like heartbreak is Eric Satie, because his beautiful piano work. There's been a number of moments, breakups, my cat dying. I'm a huge cat lover.
Going back to connecting dots. Cat, you're a cat person, not a dog person. There you go. It fits within your universe.
Yeah, somehow, yeah. I don't have any pets right now, but one day. But there's another. This is where we're going to get a little bit mellow for everybody. There's when I was in Japan in 2000. 2007, I was in this shop, and it was okay, I'm a Japanese geek, so I'm always going to these craft shops and looking for ceramics and anything to do with sake. And they was playing this so beautiful music, and I went up and I asked, and they were like, "Oh, it's from this Japanese gentleman, Kazuya Nagaya." And then I went, and I couldn't find it anywhere, and so I sent him an email, and then he basically, it's like, "Wow, I know you. I'll send you a CD." So the next day I got it, and he makes music with traditional Asian instrumentation, not specifically Japanese. And on the CD, there was a song called Plateau Early Spring. And there's another one called Tusho. And that song became my soundtrack of that trip and the next trips, when on the dance floor of Womb, I turned around in the middle of my set and met a girl from Berlin, Germany, who ended up becoming my wife. And that was our soundtrack. And it's still our soundtrack. And actually, for my 50th birthday, she repressed it on vinyl for me. So that's the song, or this is the song. And I would much rather hear that song than actually hear Erik Satie, because that only comes at very bittersweet moments. And the joke was, because I was talking to Laura earlier about this, she's like, "Well, I know what your most important gig was. May 11th, 2008 at Womb, because that's where we met." I'll tell a very short story about that, but because we didn't speak at all that night, and all I can remember is playing and feeling a different energy behind me. The moment she came up. And we're together ever since. So, yeah. Cheers. You're getting extra insight here.
I like it. Well, when you're with Laura and you're feeling sexy, what's the sexiest song?
We both picked the same song.
There you go.
Yeah, I Would Die For You, Prince. When I was a kid, I don't know, was it 1984 Purple Rain Tour? In 85? Anyway, Purple Rain Tour was my second concert I ever went to. Huge Prince fan, and did I say that? I had a purple wall in my bedroom. Yeah. I had all Prince posters. I was, huge Prince fan. Never met him, but I did see years later, because Prince was a huge fan and supporter of Detroit, and one of his biggest fan bases was there. And there was downtown, there was an old theater turned into a concert venue called the Fox Theater at 3,000 capacity, and Prince came and played. So Prince with 3,000 people is pretty fucking incredible. Yeah. So I Would Die For You. We have Prince on a lot, and I kind of stopped in my Prince fascination after Around the World in a Day, his last album with The Revolution. Yeah, I know this record. I remember being in high school, and this is kind of my fascination of Detroit back then. Like the kids in Canada, in Windsor, most of them and their parents would not go to Detroit. It was like, you can't go there. It's dangerous. It's a murder capital, blah, blah, blah. And my parents, when we were young, we would go there every weekend, because we could go to a cool mall. We were into hobby and like computer games, and we could, you find more cool stuff there. And so when I started having my car, when I wanted to go resale shopping or go buy records, I went to Detroit too. And so before anybody, because it was released in America 2 or 3 days before Canada. I had Around the World in a Day, and I was so cool, at least in my own mind at high school, because I had it, you know? So, but after that, yeah, so Laura has reintroduced me to the rest of the collection, and there's a great book that just came out on Prince.
Oh, his autobiography.
Yeah, well, no,
Well, it was meant to be his autobiography, where he passed away.
I forget. Is it The Beloved Ones?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. So okay, so I did read another. This is the other book I read during lockdown, yeah, it's short, but it's the guy who was interviewing him was fly to Minneapolis. This is such a beautiful little insightful thing about Prince, and it was in the final days. Like, he was out there when it happened, I think. So, and
he wasn't even like a journalist, or he was like, it was super bizarre.
Yeah, it was someone who, like, basically Prince. They resonated. Prince saw that this was the guy. And like, he knew it, and that's I can imagine that's why, you know, Prince had incredible connections to his sensitivity, and he knew everything that was going on. Yeah, and we could play any Prince song or the whole Purple Rain. So after this interview, if you want to listen to something else, listen to more Prince.
Well, before we get to our last question, I want to ask you, talking about Japan. Because I mean, I bought some of the best records and incredible record stores in Tokyo, and again, everything is attention to detail, and even how clean the records are. You know, even like vintage one, like pristine, like everything is A+. I'm like, how?
No. It's like, if you want to buy a used record in Japan is better than buying a new record everywhere else in the world.
Totally. Do you have a favorite record store there? Do you still buy records?
I wasn't buying records until about 2-3 years ago. I started buying records again because there was kind of this resurgence of like incredible tracks that just weren't coming out digitally. So I would buy them and encode them. And when we opened Sake 36, it was a great reintroduction to this community, and my friend Mark and Hardwax around the corner, and to the guys across the street. Like, it's I feel somehow like connected again to vinyl, like, but it's also, my dad gave me this really beautiful little Techniques record player, not a 1200. It's like the exact size of a record, 12 by 12 square, and it closes. You could actually put it up vertically, and it has a linear tracking head, which gives pretty much what the technically it's supposed to be the least amount of distortion when playing. And so since we've had that, we've basically been, buying records again, and I bought records back from Canada and re-listening to things. Yesterday, I was listening to Happy by Public Image Limited. Oh my God, I got hip hop and Yokum Pop Techno and everything all mixed together. So, because I was a huge PIL fan when I was a kid. You know what? I like vinyl more than, for sure, CDs. Environmentally, the CDs are even worse, although vinyl's kind of shit. But also streaming is even worse too. But playing. What I'm trying to say is, a CD is. I like the listening experience of a CD, because you can put it on and play the whole album, which, for me, growing up listening to my dad play records, and where we're going to go for the last record, long pieces that really suck you in is really, Tangerine Dream records, 23 minutes long, or when I did Sheet 1, it was an album. It made it, even to this day, when I look at the vinyl of Sheet 1 and where I had to, which tracks were on A, and it never made sense. Sheet 1 only makes sense to me on CD or as a long form player, because it starts and it only lets up at the end, and it is a complete narrative and story that I envisioned. That's how people would listen to it. And that's really shit about Spotify and streaming and Apple and all these, everyone, and playlists. Like, okay, I love that. Like, I'm doing a playlist, and I see the benefit of that and how people can share. That's actually incredible that you don't have to make a cassette tape up and distribute it and all that. But that there's not a proper way, or that it's not actually promoted by these platforms to enjoy and experience a piece of music that is longer than 5 minutes. It's ridiculous. Although I did just get on Deezer, thank you very much, Deezer, album of the month.
Oh, commercial.
No, but it wasn't an album, it was a single. But because it was 17 minutes, they had to call it an album, not a single. So what I just think it's, and it's the same thing that's happened with electronic music, and also with DJs getting crazy fees and musicians not making so much. To grow the scene, I can't talk about other music forms, only ours. The advent of Beatport and of digital music and Tractor, Final Scratch, all this has helped expand our universe of music. The kid in Anchorage, the girl in Patagonia can now be a techno fan, even if he or she can't go to or doesn't have a local record store. So that's absolutely incredible. But the way that the value of music has gone down somehow in that way, and has made it more difficult for people to survive on music. So we're bigger than ever, but actually people are struggling, at least on a creative level, more than ever. So this give and take with technology. So these are some of the issues that are in my head. This was coming from another point. I've kind of lost my train of thought, but
no, but that's also going back to the point. Obviously, technology playing a big role in this, but we're meant to consume quicker and faster. That also means when it comes to culture, and actually that's why they're having this conversation right now in the fashion industry about seasons, how irrelevant seasons are, and how that some of the brands, including Gucci and stuff, trying to get out of this rhythm, because it's more about, as an artist or creator, you want to have your moment of silence so you can think and create, and not be dedicated kind of like by a schedule. And
then when you want to deliver something or release something, you also have to understand that you're releasing it globally now. We on Friday night we had this Plastic Man film, and I wanted to release it at one moment for everybody, so that everybody had this kind of global moment. People were messaging back and forth. But actually to do that when it's 12 a.m. here and it's 6 p.m. in in New York and 3 p.m. there and here and there, it's very, very difficult. And I think, as you said with the fashion, what season is it where? It's every season somewhere. And, but where this did come from, so I can prove that I remember my train of thought, just about playlisting and just how far we've come, how we've spread music around the world, how we've spread our culture, how we've gone to festivals. All this stuff is great. But if we've got to rail it in, and we've got to make sure that our culture isn't misunderstood or misrepresented, so that's really important for me going forward, of how do I work in this new framework and still enjoy it and still get my creative vision through this incredible pipeline, through all these incredible platforms, to the listener or to the person's experiencing it in as pure a way as possible. Got it. I finally brought it back around.
Well, to wrap up our little chat, which was a lot of fun, if your life would be a movie, what song would play in the end credits?
Wow. I'm glad you weren't asking who would play me and all that kind of stuff. So, there was a lot of, I think life is so meandering and long and, but exciting too, but it's all over the place. It's everything, right? And I hope that when people look back at my life, or I look back at my life, that there's kind of a continuity, and that you feel that you are on a mission and that you are on a path. And so there's only one record that is long enough for that journey, for those credits, because there's been so many people who have helped me and inspired me. And there's only one record that has that monotony and has that excitement and is also always pushing forward into the future, which always drives me. And it's also one of the first records I ever heard in my dad's collection, which is Autobahn from Kraftwerk. You know, the first record I thought about, I read over, you know, can I say that? You sent me the questions before, and
I send them to everybody so they can think about their songs.
But whenever I usually don't read questions before because I much prefer jumping into something raw and live. But I looked at them last night, and the only thing, when I woke up this morning, that one resonated, and immediately Autobahn came to mind. And then the only difficulty was when you asked me about my early, you know, childhood or early, you know, ideas, that also came straight to my mind too. It actually isn't that record then. The first record from Kraftwerk that I found in my dad's record collection was Trans-Europe Express. Finding that record and was kind of an epiphany for me, because actually I found it with a friend of mine, and my friend was even more amazed because he knew what it was. And then I realized how cool my dad's records were. So that was the first record, but Autobahn, I spent, you know, I had it on cassette, which was all okay. That's a pretty good format, you know, because you got 30 minutes, or at least you got one Kraftwerk record. But those, you know, records and music that take you somewhere else, you know, that's what I want music to do to me, you know. That's what I do when I play. That's what I do when I'm making Plastic Man, or even, you know, if I'm working together with Raf. You know, you're trying to then to understand this combined vision, so that when people are watching or listen, they're transfixed, and suddenly they're somewhere else.
Have you ever listened to Autobahn? I mean, you live in Berlin. Do you ever sit in a car, just put the soundtrack and drive down the Autobahn?
Well, you know, we're usually using Drive Now in smart cars. It wouldn't be the same. Well, when I first came to Germany, it was incredible to drive around on the Autobahn. We drove everywhere. To the gigs, we drove ourselves. One time when we were driving to a gig, John Acquaviva and I actually had to take the driver out and drive ourselves again, because he had just come back from the after party. So we've done lots of driving on the Autobahn, and I was always amazed at how large this one city was in Germany called Auschwitz, until I realized what it meant. Terrible German joke, sorry. Oh, man.
I love it.
Yeah, but I'd never... Actually, the last time I drove fast on the Autobahn, I did receive a speeding ticket, because that's the thing. The Germans promote the Autobahn as no speed limit, but as a foreigner, you're quite disappointed when you do find there are sections where of course there's rules somewhere because it's Germany, but there are moments where you have to slow down.
You know, it's actually, technically, yes, there are no limits. So what they say is like there's sections of the strip where there is a limit, but that's like majority of the Autobahn. There are only smaller sections where you can actually go without anything.
On my last note about the Autobahn, what I always noticed was how people followed the rules going that fast. You know, you're flashing your lights from way beyond, or you're moving over. You're not in the middle when you're going slow. If there's nobody else, you're completely on the right, and you know it works. You know, then you go, then you go back to Detroit, the Motor City, and you're like, oh my God, the roads are falling apart. Everybody's all over the place. Well, it's fully over America, not to diss on Detroit. But anyway, you know, that's the beauty. The beauty of my life the last 30 years has been, besides music, has been traveling the world because of music, and seeing and experiencing all these idiosyncrasies of different cultures and people, and seeing how wonderful the planet is in its diversity.
Perfect way to end this beautiful chat. Richie, it's been a pleasure, and hope to see you on the dance floor very soon.
Me too.
fahren auf der Autobahn. Fahren, fahren, fahren auf der Autobahn. Wir fahren, fahren, fahren auf der Autobahn. Wir fahren, fahren, fahren auf der Autobahn.
For this episode's playlist, visit areweonair.com, where you'll be able to enjoy the full playlist mentioned in this conversation.